Stat tiering is a concept that isn't well understood by the general Final Fantasy XIV community. The particulars of how secondary stats actually translate into healing and damage numbers is generally overlooked in favor of leaving it to the math wizards who create those best-in-slot gear slots that you copy and paste into your own gameplay. But that doesn't mean stat tiers aren't important, or at the very least, pretty interesting. I'm Zeke, and today I want to take you behind the scenes to talk about stat tiering. This is part of my Healer Leftover series, in which I talk about concepts that don't always make it in the guides, but are still very important. So while I said this would be a discussion on stat tiering, I lied. Sorry. What I actually meant is that this is an in-depth, highly optimized explanation about buying hot dogs. Yes, you heard me right. Hot dogs. I'll pitch you a hypothetical situation. Let's say your family is hosting a cookout and you're in charge of buying the food. You go to the grocery store, walk over to the bread aisle, and grab 3 packs of 8 hot dog buns. Buns in tow, you head over to the meat section where disaster strikes. The store only sells hot dogs in packs of 10. What do? Do you buy 20 hot dogs and 24 buns so that you have 4 leftover buns? Is that enough food? Do you buy 30 hot dogs and have 6 extra hot dogs? Do you do something crazy like buy 40 hot dogs just so that everything evens out? You thought this was going to be an easy task, but instead you've run face first into one of the most difficult questions of the modern era. What do? Well, you need an adult, that's for sure. Okay, I was a bit hungry and it got the better of me there. Let's get back on topic. What is a stat tier? A stat tier is a numerical threshold you need to meet in order to get a larger boost from a specific stat. I'll give you an example. Remember how determination works? Determination gives you a flat percentage increase to all of your healing and damage. The more determination you have, the higher this percentage is. Let's head over to the Theory Jerks website to check out how much determination influences your damage. Using their helpful tables, we can see that 1610 determination corresponds to a 5% damage and healing increase. At the same time, we see that 1611 determination also corresponds to a 5% increase, as does 1612, 1613, and so on. This percentage doesn't increase until 1635 determination, where it changes to a 5.1% increase. So what does this mean? This means that every point of determination between 1610 and 1635 determination is worthless. Even though your amount of determination may increase, it might not actually affect how much damage you deal. 1610 and 1635 are what is known as determination stat tiers. In other words, if you hit these tiers, you get the bonuses associated with them, but any amount that you exceed a tier by without hitting the next one is wasted. You know what else gets wasted? Hot dog buns, if you don't have enough hot dogs. When the cookout is over and all the hot dogs have been eaten, a lot of people just throw the excess buns away. There just isn't a use for them. Boom. We've come full circle. There was never a cookout. You've been bamboozled. The hot dog buns were actually just secondary stats this whole time, and the hot dogs are just stat tiers in disguise. Come on now, you didn't actually think this video would be fun, did you? Our hot dog dilemmas are exactly the same ones we have with stat tiering. Oftentimes, your melds don't nicely match up with stat tiers, and they get wasted to an extent. Usually this waste is fairly small, but it can get pretty large, especially for stats like spell speed that have really large gaps between stat tiers. For example, if you have 1359 spell speed, you will have a 2.4 second GCD. If you add 1 meld of spell speed, you'll have 1419 spell speed, and will still have a 2.4 second GCD. The entirety of this meld gets wasted, and that's because it isn't enough to hit the next spell speed tier. The 2.4 second spell speed tier is at 1320, and the 2.39 second spell speed tier is at 1421. As you can see, 1419 just misses this. This is like having 16 hot dog buns and only 10 hot dogs. You can meld 60 more spell speed, or grab 8 more buns to accommodate 20 more hot dogs, but now you're wasting quite a bit of a meld. Remember how we were only 2 spell speed away from hitting that 1421 tier? So now 58 of the 60 spell speed we melded is being wasted. This is better than before, but not by much. In our hot dog analogy, now we have 24 buns for 20 hot dogs, so we're wasting 4 buns instead of 6. Again, this is better, but certainly not ideal. What would be ideal, however, is if our hot dogs and buns lined up. If you remember from earlier, 40 hot dogs and buns works out really nicely. In our spell speed example, if we took 8 spell speed melds, then we'd go all the way up to 1839 spell speed, which hits the 1827 stat tier while only wasting 12 spell speed, or 1/5 of a meld. In both of these cases, however, we have a new problem. Do we really like hot dogs enough to buy 40 of them? That's more than we need, after all. If you ask the analogous question for spell speed, the answer is probably that this is more spell speed than we're comfortable with, and furthermore, to get this much spell speed, we might have to replace other, more valuable stat melds like Determination to pull this off. In cases like this, you often have to compromise and find situations where you aren't wasting a ton of hot dog buns, but also aren't committing yourself to too many hot dogs. Perhaps we'd prefer to try only 3 melds or 1539 spell speed. The tier here is at 1523 spell speed, so we're wasting 16 spell speed. This isn't as good as only wasting 12, but we also haven't committed ourselves to too much spell speed. This is just like buying 32 buns and 30 hot dogs. There's still some waste, but not too much. Hot dog buying can be a pretty involved decision, and so is stat tiering. Oftentimes, these decisions are better left to adults. In the case of stat tiering, these adults are generally mentors of the balanced Discord who work tirelessly behind the scenes, crunching numbers so that they can release optimized gear sets for different situations. Some gear sets are built for comfort and waste a bit of resources so that you can play in a way that is familiar to you. Other gear sets commit to all 40 hot dogs, hitting multiple stat tiers optimally, hitting you strange and less comfortable stats in exchange for raw power. While you can generally leave hot dog buying to these mentors, this doesn't mean that you can't take a quick trip to the store yourself. Everyone's options are different while gearing up, and sometimes you'll find yourself in spots where you don't have an adult to hold your hand. Hopefully this video will give you some intuition in these situations. If you enjoyed this guide, or are hungry for some more healer leftovers, as I clearly was in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Maybe they'll be answered in my next episode of Healer Leftovers.